The 2024 Brisbane Broncos. The most disappointing team, probably one of the most disappointing teams of all time. We've still got 5 rounds to go left in 2024 this NRL season. And not only are they out of any premiership contention, they are already out of any chance to play finals footy this season, which is absolutely crazy. This is still the most powerful, the richest, and the biggest club, not just in the NRL, but to be honest, probably in Australian sport. They've missed 4 of the last 5 final series, and now they're going to be missing it for the 3rd in the last 4 years under Kevy Walters. And the Penrith Panthers have really been killing every club they seem to be beating in the grand final. Look at South Sydney. They went on to, yes, they made a play in the following year, but now they are in one of the worst positions they've been in for a very long time. And now the Parramatta Eels are in a genuine wooden spoon race with the West Tigers, who lost to the Panthers in 2022. But at least, while an unpopular opinion, a few people did say that both the Rabbitohs and the Eels had things going against them. You look back to the Rabbitohs, they obviously lost their captain and halfback, and then they lost one of the great coaches of all time who had proven to be a record of when he left the club, they would fall down the rugby league And prior to the 2022 season even starting, many thought that it was the final year of the Parramatta Eels premiership window they had built, because there were a lot of questions raised over some of their recruitment and some of their retention. But this Brisbane Broncos team, while many question why they let go of Flegler and why they had to let go of Farnworth, it made sense. I mean, the Dolphins have so much cap room, it's not even funny. And you got to think, they signed these guys before they made their official season debut prior to last year kicking off. And many thought that the Dolphins were lucky to even scrape by and not get the wooden spoon. So to be as good as they have been, especially in that first year, has sort of let people forget how bad the Dolphins were and why Flegler and Farnworth would have gone there is because how much they would have been able to pay them. But even with that, even if the Broncos just simply couldn't match the offer the Dolphins were throwing at those two guys, how they have gone from essentially being the NRL premiers, they should have held on. 9 times out of 10, they would hold on and they would win that game. How they managed to lose that is one story, but how they've managed to go on and have the 2024 season that they've had, especially in that middle part of the year. I mean, their second last win, meaning their win before the Knights game, was all the way back in May when they beat Manly by a point in Magic Round. This club, this powerhouse, this freakishly young, talented team has won 2 games since the beginning of May. And I know they've had injuries, but we go back to their crosstown rivals, the Dolphins. The Dolphins haven't had Tom Gilbert all year. Jesse Bromwich, their captain, has missed a serious amount of time. Herbie Farnworth's missed time. Asako's now missing time. Hammer's missed through Origin. I know the Dolphins haven't been great since, well, Wayne Bennett signed with the Rabbitohs, and whether that's a coincidence or not, we all know the true rugby league answer. But there is no excuse for how poor the Brisbane Broncos have been, and it's really been the last few weeks, because they came back, they got their full team back together after that Origin decider. They got Adam Reynolds back, and they went to Newcastle and they put in a good performance. Granted, Newcastle were nowhere near their best, but the Broncos ran circles around them, and if they just iced a few more opportunities, they could have really ran that scoreline up, because honestly, they should have probably put 50 on them with the amount of possessions and the amount of chances that they created. But the last 2 weeks, when their season is literally on the line against the Bulldogs, a statement chance in front of a near sellout crowd at Suncorp, one of the biggest Suncorp crowds we have seen for a while, and they put in that performance. Cameron Ciraldo simply outcoached them. Their edge defense had no answers. Kevy Walters could not figure out how to defend the Bulldogs. And what was even worse is that they had all these weapons in attack, and it felt like unless Reece Walsh could pull something out of his backside, they simply had no choice. Walsh had one excellent try, and then Katoni Stacks had an unbelievable individual effort. And outside of that, the Bulldogs simply absolutely ran through them. And you thought that that was probably the end to their season, because now it's set up them to have to go undefeated, as well as then have a few scorelines go their way, and they couldn't even get over hurdle 1. They were up 12-0 against the Gold Coast Titans. The Titans started the second half with a sin bin to their superstar young gun fullback, and they still won that half 36-0 against last year's runners-up. In 9 out of 10 timelines, this Brisbane Broncos team right now is going into the final series as heavy favourites looking to go back-to-back. But we live in this 10th timeline where they've absolutely fallen off a cliff again. And what's super concerning is that we've seen this before. Last year was different. They rode the big wave. They went into the grand final as the clear team to challenge Penrith. And you got to admit that if it wasn't for Nathan Cleary's spectacular performance, they would be premiers. They probably win 80 to 90% of all grand finals in history. But go back to 2022 and they came out on fire. 2021 was a Kevy Walters teething year. They didn't do too well. They were in a wooden spoon battle and they found form at the end of the season. Whereas 2022, they go in and they belted the Eels at Combat. The grand finalists that year, they absolutely belted them, was sitting in the top 4 with not many rounds left, and they ended up going on one of the worst slides of all time, got pumped by the Dragons in the final round when their final spot was literally on the line and managed to miss the top 8 entirely. And I know guys like Walsh and Mann didn't play that game, but it's a pretty similar roster. But what's most concerning is they went on this incredible slide, and you could forgive it for the first year. While there's always going to be pressure on Kevy when the Broncos weren't going well, you could understand that maybe it was a first time. What the problem with Kevy is this year is that he should have learned from 2022, and he just hasn't. He's not a rookie coach anymore, Kevy. He's going into his 5th year as the Broncos head coach, which is a long time in today's NRL standards. So there's got to be a lot of pressure on Kevy, but you can understand why a lot of people would be hesitant to do that, because he is the one. Well, he got rid of Reece Walsh initially to go to the Warriors, but he got him back. He was the one who turned him into this superstar. He was great and showed great signs at the New Zealand Warriors, but he was nowhere near what he is now. Walsh is now essentially probably the second best fullback in the entire competition, which is the most stacked position. He's turned Paddy Carrigan from this young gun captain who Seabold pretty much just threw under the bus. He's turned him into, at least in my opinion, probably a top 3 middle forward in the game. You even look at guys like Ezra Mam. He made that decision to give the keys to Ezra Mam, and he chucked Billy at hooker, who had a great season last year. He's unearthed Corey Jensen. He's made Ricky such a better player. Kevy's done so much good with this roster, to the point where now we're looking at this roster on paper and we are disgusted with the fact how they can't even make the finals. You look at their roster against the Titans and against the Bulldogs, and no disrespect is meant to either of those teams because they're both super young and are looking like they're going in such great directions. But you look at them lineup for lineup, this Broncos team on paper should have smoked both of them, just like they did all of last year. And even when they have these injuries at the beginning of the year, people talking about how Tristan Saylor should be a starting NRL fullback, and every other club, he comes in and all of a sudden no one wants to touch Tristan Saylor with a 10-foot pole. Go back to that Manly game and Jock Madden, people were talking about he should be a starting NRL halfback. There were rumours that the teams like the Titans and the Bulldogs should go after a halfback like Jock Madden, and I tell you what, Jock Madden is the furthest thing away from those teams right now. The Broncos had the next man up mentality, and this year it has just completely fallen off. And it's hard to put a finger on it. Obviously, they're going to have to do one of the great rugby league deep end of season reviews of all time. I don't think Kevy's going to be sacked just yet, but next year becomes honestly a massive turning point in this team's, and to be honest, more so this club's future, because they've gone from this young gun side to, do they just need a rebuild? Because Adam Reynolds has only got a year left. When you look at how important it is for a veteran halfback presence, they probably only have one more year to win a comp with this roster. This year, last year, and next year should be the years where this team contends for a comp, because Ezra Mann's going to need a huge payday, which he got. Reece Walsh is going to need a humongous payday. It's absolutely crazy how to think the Brisbane Broncos have fallen. I mean, they were my tip to win the entire NRL, so maybe I curse him, in which case it's actually quite hilarious. But they've gone from the second best defensive team to a team that's absolutely fallen off. And to be honest, when you look at the Broncos, when you look at the Eels, and when you look at South Sydney, it just shows how incredible what the Storm and the Roosters have done for so long. And it also shows how incredible the Penrith Panthers are, because that's the same team. The Storm and the Roosters have been doing it for ages, but Penrith, what they've done the last couple of years has been absolutely insane. These teams go to a grand final one year to match them, and then they just completely, for lack of a better term, that is fitting of this situation, they literally just die in the arse. Defense has been a huge problem, and then this attacking juggernaut has just completely gone away from itself. It's at the moment, it's give Reece Walsh the ball and hope for a miracle to happen when you've got Katoni Staggs, you've got Adam Reynolds, you've got Dean Mariner, through the middle you've got Payne Haas and Paddy Carrigan. And it's not like it's a case of second year syndrome for Walsh, because while a lot of people are laughing at his expense, he's literally carrying that team at the moment in the past 2 weeks At least he's only one having a crack. At least he's having a dig. And he's creating opportunities and scoring off him. I mean, Payne Haas was putting in grubber kicks on tackle 3. This team went from pretty much a guaranteed NRL premiership. They did lose to one of the great performances I've probably ever seen when it comes to a rugby league halfback, that being the great Chin himself. But I can't believe where the Brisbane Broncos are at. And it's sort of beginning to last year where they're coming off this absolute capitulation at the end of 22. And they all had these questions, but they got Reece Walsh. They put Ezra Mem into the starting lineup, and they just turned into this absolute beast team. And you thought these guys were going to kick on again, and unfortunately, a lot of them have had pretty much a second-year syndrome sort of thing. So I think Kevy does go into next year under heaps of pressure. I think if they get rid of him during the off-season, unless they find something in their review, they just simply can't get rid of him. It sounds like their assistant coaches, Bill Cartwright, who worked with the Broncos the last few years and worked with the Blues, he's leaving. I think that other one's leaving too, and then they're bringing in Ben Teo, and of all the great rugby league coaches, they're also bringing in Trent Barrett. And I will say, I think Teo is got an interesting one, but I think Barrett can really help this attack. You give Barrett as an attacking coach the weapons that the Brisbane Broncos have, he could do wonders, but it's going to be a hell of a season for Brisbane next year, and it could be club defying because it'll be Reynolds' last year at the very least. And if you're one of these top dogs who are coming off such an incredible year, but you're also coming off these absolute capitulations, it's going to be very interesting to see where the Brisbane Broncos end up. When you look at this team on paper, you think to yourself, there's a reason they're going to turn it around. I mean, Reece Walsh will be a year older, Ezra Mann will be a year older, even guys like Payne Haas and Paddy Carrigan, who are so good, they're also going to be a year older when they're super young. So maybe this will be better for them. But holy heck, it's just another year where they've fallen off a cliff. And maybe that's a Kevy thing. Maybe Kevy hasn't learned from 2022. And if he doesn't learn from this one, because he has been quite, for lack of a better word, I would say arrogant when people have criticised him. And you know, none of the media are going to criticise him because he's worked with them all, which is completely understandable, I guess. I do think if they can stay majority fit, that they'll find themselves back into the 8. I don't think they've got the resilience at this point to win a comp. I just don't think they've got that built into them. But I guess we can wait and see. It's going to be a huge year, 2025, for the Brisbane Broncos. I don't think anyone really saw this coming. If you said they were missing top 4, I could understand because of the grand final hangover. But this has just been... I mean, they're sitting in the bottom 4. They're sitting behind the Gold Coast Titans, for Christ's sake. Anyway, guys, smash that like button. Subscribe if you haven't yet already. Let me know what you think about the Brisbane Broncos in that comment section down below. And I'll see you in the next one.